Hello, and thanks for joining tonight's session. Tonight we're going to be working on the Astrocasts website again. And just for a quick review, what we got here is this Astrocasts site homepage, does some fun stuff to connect to Twitch so that it will actually show you the live stream if it's happening. If not, it gives you a nice little countdown. We have a live sessions page that is supposed to give you the same sort of countdown information. We've got a chat page now. One of the things we did was added this launch chat button that will take you to the chat stream so that you can see all of the people talking from all of the various different places that it's broadcasting to. So right now that's Google, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And I think Facebook is working again now. So this is a good place to see all of the chat that's happening, not just the stuff that's happening on the platform that it's being watched on. We also have a bit of admin interface that I believe is available here. I'm going to go to admin. There we go. And we're able to see videos. It says no videos. That's interesting. There we go. I don't think I had the server running, maybe. Maybe that doesn't matter either. Let's see what we got. Huh. All right. Well, I'm not sure why we don't have any videos. Let's go ahead and add one. We'll do session 8. And then see if I can log into Vimeo. Awesome. All right, so all videos. That's an interesting background. So let's go ahead and view this one and use this URL. All right, so video. There we go. Well, that's not the URL I've copied, I don't think. Double check here. All right. Still, wow. Oh, it's only doing the ID. That's why, not the whole URL. All right, so if we go back to live sessions, Astrocast live, and here we go. Private video. All right, so we can't actually watch this one just yet, but this is the general idea of what we have so far. One of the last things that we worked on the last session was coming up with a way to register. Registration, so that people could pick a username and a password. And this was, it just pretty much started. It just let you create a username and password. It didn't do a lot of checking. So what we're going to want to do is add some information to it. But first I'm going to open up the project. There we go. All right. So everything's set up now. The things that we want to do with the registration form, I'd originally taken the email address out of the user object. I think I'm going to add that in again. I'm going to add an isVerified flag. Or not necessarily just an isVerified flag, but isVerified functionality. I think it's probably going to need a flag and also some sort of secret value. In order to get verified, we're going to probably have to send some emails. So we're going to use SwiftMailer and Mailtrap to do some testing there. So I don't have to set up an actual mail server just yet. And I want to do the SwiftMailer and Mailtrap stuff by a queue. So I don't want it to actually do the email real time. I want it to actually do it through a worker. So I want to set up Symfony Messenger component, which I haven't worked with yet. It sounds like it's supposed to be pretty awesome, but I haven't used it. And then I want to set up RabbitMQ, which I haven't used either. So this little section is probably going to be a lot of fun. But before I dive into that, I want to add the email address to the user, and I want to add is verified type functionality. I probably need to get somebody with more security expertise to tell me if I'm doing this right. But just to get started, I think it'll probably be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our application here, and let's look for user. So we'll look at our user entity, and so right now, right now I'm going to add a user or add email address to the user. So let's see, we have roles. All right, we'll do form column. We can support some long email addresses. We need to do some unique testing. So we're going to do unique true on email address. And then let's do getters and setters. All right. All right, so if we recall, this was just part of the problem, but let's leave it like this for now. And let's go ahead and do some more work with our migration. So we'll do bin console trim migrations diff. And this should contain the SQL that's required to add the email address. All right, so add email address to user and create unique. Drop schema public. Cool. And then we can migrate. User at email address. So it's complaining about the email address being null. So let's look at what our other migrations did for that. So we have username, varchar not null. Okay, so I guess that makes sense. I'm not exactly sure the best way to handle that because we have an existing user in the database. I'm just gonna delete it. There we go. Now we should be able to run the migration. I'm fortunate that I don't have live data to actually worry about there. I think a way to have handled that would be to do that in 2 migrations, or find some way to have like a maybe do it in 1. I don't know if you could do it in 1. But essentially we would add it the first time with the null capability, and then do some additional work to try and backfill the email addresses if possible. And then once they all are filled with values, then we could update this table to allow, or to no longer allow a null. But in the meantime, we now have an email address. So that's all there. So where this actually happens was in some form components. So if we go into our source directory, we have a form, we have a command object, and we have a user registration type. So we don't actually have user form types. We just have the information that describes what we're actually getting. So plain password, username. I'm going to do email address. and I'm going to make this a text type. So this is adding to the actual registration form. All right. 1 second here. All right. So email address, if we look at the registration screen, this is the form. So we have username and password. That's all we need. You'll see in some cases that people will map exactly to the entity itself. That can be good. It can also be kind of complicated. So I'm not doing it that way, so that the registration or the actual form types and the command objects that they're dealing with are more simple. So we also need to add email here. Also, there's some nice things that you can do with this, where the actual form constraints or the validator constraints happen. I think they only happen at the form level, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But these now no longer impact the entity itself, which can be useful in some cases. So I'm going to switch this to email address. Insert not blank. And I want to see if they have email. Okay. Email validation can sometimes be a little tricky, but we'll just see how far we can get with this. Generate the getters and setters. All right. So now we have the type aware of the email address, and we have the actual command object aware of the email address. So if we go back to our controllers for registration, what we can do then is do something now with the email address. So here's where the translation happens from the user registration object, or the user registration command object, and the actual user object. So here we're going to do $user set email address to user registration get email address. So this will ensure that these values are there. I don't remember if is there a unique validator. No, I don't think so. Unique entity. Particular field or fields and a doctrine entity are unique. So this might actually have to be on doctrine if we're to use this statement. Unique entity. Oh yeah, so this is bridge validator. I'm not going to worry about that for now. I think we'll get an error if you try to use the same email address or username that's already in the system. So reload, we still haven't done anything to the form really. So we do get email address now, which is a little interesting because we didn't actually display it. But this is what happens when you do form end. What form end does is look to see if there are any fields that were not included up here. If they exist, or if form fields exist that weren't up here to begin with, then it will try to create them the best that it can. So I'm going to move it up here email address. And now when we redraw, email address is at the top. So let's see here. I'm going to do foo, foo, foo. All right, so value is not a valid email address. So it is doing some validation here. So we'll do foo@example.com. Password is required. There we go. All right, so it looks like it actually created that user. So let's go ahead and see what's in the DB. All right, so we got foo@example.com and we got roles. Their role user, we have their password. So let's see what happens if we try to register with that same email address again. So we'll do foo@example.com, foo, and foo. Okay, so we're getting an error, which I'm totally fine with. So what I think we need to do, there could be better ways to do this, but I don't know if there is. So let's do back to home. So essentially, we need to ask the user repository if a user exists by that username. So let's do user repository, which it can't find. Why can't it find that? Oh, so I didn't put a comma. So user repository, user repository. All right, cool. So now we can do if find by username. There we go. We want to redraw this. But we need to give it an error as well. So if the username already exists or if the email address exists. Let's see what we can do. Add error. We'll do email address. Message template. Message invalid business property path. All right, I'm just going to do see if these work. I think what we need to do, we're not showing all errors. So I think on the login page, we did that. No. Yeah, so let's do this. Error.messageData. Maybe we need to pass in error. No, that's not going to work. Form errors. Render all fields. Let's see if we can just use this. All right, there we go. So how do I should be able to get that to the username field. All right, so we have to be more specific. So what we can do here is not just add it to the form, but we can do get username, add error, and here we'll get email address, add error. There we go, sweet. All right, so now that's a little more useful because it tells us right away what the problem is, but it does look a little weird the way it's rendering. But I don't think we can really do much about that. Also, it's failing out early. As far as rendering is concerned. Let's see if we can look here. Get errors. This way we could see all at once. There we go. Cool. So now we can not worry about the order that they actually are displaying in, and we can see all of these errors at the same time. So that email address is already used, username already in use, and then password. Okay. All right, so wait, no, email verification. Is that what I called it? No, yeah, verified. Just want to make sure that this is sending confirmation link. Okay, so I think I'm just going to go for it. So what this is going to do is it's actually going to give us a user. The user then can log in using their username and password. So we can do foo, password foo, and I'm now logged in. And if I go to the Astrocasts admin, it's not going to allow me in because I don't have access. So I think I might have to trigger that differently. So, but I am actually logged in. You can see with the debug toolbar that I am logged in as a user. So I'm logged in as foo, username, password, token. So it thinks I'm foo. If I go to log out, log in, I can do it again. And still thinks I'm foo. So that's all fine and good. However, if I want to do some sort of like email verification to make sure that email address is good, I need to send emails. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and set up SwiftMailer and do some stuff inline inside the controller, or inside the registration controller, because at this point I'm actually creating the user. So I want to send an email now to somebody to hopefully verify that this email address is correct. So I'm going to double check Symfony SH, find out the best way to install SwiftMailer. All right, so Symfony SwiftMailer bundle. So composer rec swift. Oh, I will just do composer rec mail. All right, so it's gonna add some stuff for me. Now I can look in my .env file and look for mailer. All right, so mailer URL is localhost. I don't want that, so I want to use mailtrap.io. So generic HTTP server, it's address, encryption, auth mode. Okay. All right, so demo inbox, username and password. All right, so we'll do port 25. I guess username and password. I did that wrong. There we go. So this should send mail, or if I send mail at this point, it should just go to Mailtrap. So let's create a new email. Symfony send twig email. Render view. So this is actually something inside the default controller. You can render a view that is just part that is just twig that isn't going to be part of the whole site. So if you want to include plain text version, let's not do that. So let's do this. All right, so we have message set from is going to be Beau at Astrocasts.com. Set to is going to be to user get email address. And we're going to render a view emails. Can I create that? I thought maybe it would be nice. So let's do it. Templates. Call it there. So we're just going to put this here. It doesn't actually have the link in it yet or anything, but we'll just use it to see if it actually sends correctly. All right, so that's working, and we'll do user is $user. There we go. So this is already looking like a lot of stuff in the registration controller. So there's a lot of reasons why we want to bump this out. Let's go ahead and do a plain text version as well. Yeah, so templates email. I'll just have to remember to go in and make this look nicer later. There we go. So it should actually have two parts. And then we have to send it. So let's see. Mailer. Here we go. So we'll just type hint mailer. There we go. In theory, this should just work if all of this has gone as expected. I'm just gonna keep using foo. All right, so foo, foo, foo. I wonder if it did anything. The inbox still empty. So, and didn't create anything. Remember, do we have logging set up? Or might be that I deleted the user and it still thought it was logged in, right? Yeah, now it's anonymous. That might have been the problem. I was logged in as a non-logged in user. Nope. All right, so now we get to do some debugging. So just see if we can do this. If this doesn't work, then who knows what the problem is. Expected what? Oh. All right. Let's intercept redirects here. Registration, populated token storage. So it's actually doing these SQL queries. So it wasn't actually a problem here. Interesting. So the problem here is that getErrors always gets an object. So we were testing it before to make sure it would show us an error if username and email address, either of them existed. But it was also trying to redraw the form, even if these never added errors. All right, so twig error loader, unable to find template, email, registration, HTML twig. Really? Well, all right. Now the problem exists that this user is in the database already. So even though they never received this email, or we never even tried to send it to them, they would have existed. So we're going to remove that. Go back here. Try this all again. Awesome. So it actually did something. And now we have the redirect interception on, so we can actually see what happened here. So validator calls, number of forms. We can see that it sent a message. So we can go ahead and look in here. So it sent raw content. It can render the content. So foo was the name, so that makes sense. And then we see the alternate part. We can also hopefully go to our mail trap, and sure enough, here we go. So verify your email address. It's delivered to foo@example.com, came from Beau@astrocast.com, and says hello foo. So it's rendering everything correctly. We have a text version, HTML source. We can check out the raw analysis. Cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. We actually have the emails going out. So what we really want to do next, and where most of the fun is probably going to be, is actually creating the queue part of this. So what we've done here now is created the user and decided that we wanted to send this verification stuff. So what we really need to do is move this code out into its own thing, so that one, it can happen on its own time, so it doesn't actually have to hinder their ability to see the page, but also to kind of move the email logic, or the fact that, hey, we're doing something with email somewhere else, because right now this is a lot of different things happening in this one register method. Another thing that might happen is the user might need to eventually be able to say, resend the verification email. Well, this code is all going to be locked to the registration. So either we have to move it into a service, or we'd have to copy and paste this code. So neither of those things maybe make sense. Instead, we can use a queue to send messages and handle those asynchronously. So in order to get this going, we're going to use the Symfony messenger component. Let's see, component. And this is the messenger component docs themselves. I kind of took a scan on this earlier. There's a sender and a receiver, responsible for handling messages, buses and things like that. But I'm not going to worry about this here. I'm going to go to the how to use Messenger in a Symfony application. The other stuff's going to be good to know at some point. But really, where I need to pay the most attention is how to use this in the application itself. So I'm going to start off by requiring Messenger. We'll see what that gets us. So just one thing, really. All right, so it gives me some nice help text here. So let's see what they say. So you're ready to use Messenger component. Define your own message buses, or start using the default one right away by injecting message bus default service, or type hinting against message bus interface. I think this is probably what I'm going to do. If you need to send messages to your broker, you can benefit from the built-in AMQP transport by installing the AMQP pack, which I think I'm going to do, and then uncommenting the messenger transport DSN variable. All right, so let's do this first. Let's see if it has any other dependencies. All right, so it requires an extension. This might be fun. Install. All right, let's just try this. Let us tag, or let's try without sudo. And maybe we'll get lucky and it will just work. Eesh. I don't know if I have that installed. Error failed. Okay, so I need RabbitMQ. How do I get that installed? Wonder if I can just do that. Brew. Wonder which one I need. I guess let's just do this. Make sure everything's up to date. Wow. That's oh, okay. Batch completion. Services start. Let's just go ahead and do that right off. Cool. And then let's try pair again, or Peckle install. Still no RabbitMQ. Wonder if this is just the C bindings. C client. I don't understand why that couldn't be auto-detected. Package, okay, so please reinstall Libra. see if this makes sense. Which version of that did we install? 090. So I guess that was the same. Configure the RabbitMQ not found. I don't think that matters. That isn't even kind of what I wanted. AMQP dir. Search for wonder if this is something where package. Computer. Try this instead. There we go. Cool. Now we can get back to Composer. I think I know what it was, but it's always nice to see. Cool. All right. So this is installing a couple of things for us. The AMQP pack, which let's go see what that actually includes. So we go to Packages, Packages, Package. Those packages. So that installs Serializer Pack and Symfony Messenger, which we already have Messenger. Serializer Pack brings in a bunch of stuff. So I'm not sure which of these we didn't have before. I know we had annotations, but I don't know if we had the other things. All right, so let's get back to, wow, look at all of that. All right, so Composer require Messenger. And I think we'd actually seen that AMQP thing from the output of Composer install Messenger, or Composer require Messenger. So rolling back all the way to here. So what we can do now is use the Messenger service. So what we can do is say Messenger bus interface. And we're going to do this in our registration controller now. We are going to be able to get rid of some of this stuff in a bit. There we go. Brought in Messenger bus interface. Let's see if we have some maker bundle things that can make messages. Server make voter user. No. Which is probably fine. I just thought it might be a quick way to do that. All right, so the way this is used is we need to dispatch something. So we're going to use bus dispatch, and then we're going to create a new message that is going to be sort of representative, not of needing to send an email necessarily. At least I don't think so, and I don't think that's the way this is supposed to work. I think what I'm going to send is user registered, and then we're going to pass in the I think it's going to serialize this stuff. I don't know if I really want I'm going to do username. Or you know what? Let's just do user. Let's see what happens if we do that. So user registered doesn't exist, and it looks like what they're recommending is to use the messenger handler namespace. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's get up into source, do new directory, and actually that's the handler. Send notification was in app message. Okay, that makes sense. So we'll do message as well. So there's messages and there's handlers. If you're used to using queues in Laravel, they sort of mix these two concepts together. I think they're called self-handling things. Laravel message self-handling. Well, at least at the command bus level. Was this old? Yeah, so self-handling. In this case, you construct the message itself, or the command in this case. So like here's user in a podcast, you save it to the object, and then the object itself knows how to handle it, which makes a lot of sense really for command buses, because usually there's a one-to-one relationship between commands and the handler, so that makes a lot of sense in this case. In our case, we're actually going to use this more as an event, sort of, because there's potentially going to be multiple listeners to the user registered event. All right, so we created message, so now we need to create the class of user registered. No, we need to do a class. And we're going to have a user. Constructor and getters and setters. Because we're going all in on doctrine the way it's not meant to be used. All right, so user registered, there we go. So now we're actually creating this. And then what we need to do is look to see here. So my message handler, if the message cannot be guessed from the handler's type hint, use the handles attribute on the tag. So what it's going to do, and this is actually pretty cool, is this handler is just going to be a executable, or not a callable. So it doesn't have anything to do with the name of the class in the message handler. What it's looking at is the invoke function and this. So when the message comes through the queue, any of the handlers that are that take the argument of my message will be handled by will handle the my message. So all we need to do, if I'm reading this right, is create a we'll do send verification, or send email verification. Yeah, it's a little too long, but whatevs. All right, so we don't have to do anything except do invoke. So let's do and so we want our user registered message, and then we can do something with it. And what we're going to do with it, surprise, surprise, is what we had in the registration controller previously. So everything in this try block now is leaving. That also means we can get rid of some of these things. We can get rid of mailer for sure. That might actually be the only thing we can get rid of. But that also gives us an idea of what sort of dependencies this might have. So let's do private mailer, Swift mailer, getters, setters, no, constructor. So we need a mailer object for sure. Paste the value, get rid of the try catch. And use this instead of $mailer. All right, so the other thing we need is user. So we get user from user, pasted, forgot to copy this. We get that from our object, so we can say get user. So in the controller, the registration controller, we are doing all of the stuff to actually register the user. Then we're dispatching an event or a message that we're using as an event to say that the user has registered. And we're passing in the full user. So on the receiving end, anytime a user registered message is received, then we will do this code. We could probably I don't know if I want to make this more complicated. The problem here is that the thing that I said before, where I said we might want to eventually do this multiple ways. For example, when user is registered, or if someone clicks resend the verification email, this doesn't solve that problem, unfortunately. But I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I think what we'll eventually have to do is maybe create two buses, one for events, like what I'm doing here, and then another for commands. And so what would happen in user registered, and this is probably going to seem ridiculous, but we're going to do bus dispatch. Maybe we will do this now just because, but I want to see it work just with one bus first. We can do bus dispatch, new send email address verification email. Send email, and then pass in user registered, get user, and that would be it for this class. So the idea being that there are things that are happening on the system that multiple things might want to listen to. So in this case, multiple things might want to listen to event registered. On the other side, then there are things that you might want to be called from multiple paths. So this would be on the command side. So things would be listening and then dispatching the things that should be done. But I'm not going to do that now, but I think I will get there sooner rather than later. I don't know that we need to do much else. So let's see here. We do have to tag things as a message handler. I don't want to do that, so what I'm going to do is use the new PSR4 stuff in Symfony 4. So let's go to services. I don't know why that's not open. There must be a limit to the number of things you can have open. Services.yaml. So what I can do is say anything in message handler is going to map to source/message handler, and then I'm going to ensure they all have anything in the message handler is going to be tagged with message handler. It's possible I don't need this if things are set up for auto configure, but I don't know if that's the case. So I'm going to do this for now and then see if we can remove that later and if it just works. So we're going to look in config packages messenger.yaml, and I think we have to uncomment that. So let's go look and see. Packages messenger. Yeah, so we'll use the default name. Route your messages to transport. I don't know if I have to do that. Messenger transports. Let's look in .env first. Mailer, so here's messenger transport. I'm going to point it at my local server, which I think these are the defaults. So let's just hope that works. If it does, great. And then we need to check for the routing. Instead of calling a handler, you have the option to route your messages to a sender. Part of the transport is supposed to send a message somewhere. You configure which message is routed to which sender. The name of the defined transport. You can route all classes of messages at the same sender using an asterisk. I guess. I'll just do this. It's possible this would just work, but let's double check and see. And then to consume the message, we actually have to run something. So what this does is it fires up a listener that will just look at the queue to consume the messages. So let's see here if this runs. Not too bad. Let's add some debugging or verbosity. Doesn't matter. Var log dev. Okay, so management. Okay, so queues. All right, so it created one called messages. I don't think I created that. All right, so that's there. So let's go ahead and try to create a user. Let's do bar at example.com and see if this works. Load class AMQP connection with global namespace. Oh, well, that's not good. Line was at. wonder if those can exist outside. Oh, there we go. I think the problem's most likely that I didn't restart my PHP server. But we are in a case now, again, where we have the user, which is not good. Not good. All right, the server's been restarted. Let's do bar register. All right, so it actually did register. Don't save that. We go here. Message is ready. Does it have a consumer? No consumer, because did we stop it? Yes, we did. Ooh, all right, awesome. So we got an error here. Attempted to call an undefined method named render view. Oh, awesome. So this, yeah. So the problem is that we're using this method that doesn't exist, this render view. I think we need to get twig in here, so $twig. Twig environment, I believe. Actually, let's go look. Oops. Let's go look at what this is doing. So render. Templating, render view. How's ID twig? Render partial. What was it again? Render view. All right, so what do I type in for templating? See here, twig. Swift mailer. Engine interface, there we go. So we could do this templating render. But what this does tell me, which makes me super happy, is that this is more or less working. Render. No. Let's see. Templating render. Render response. response instance. No. This is not what we want. Framework bundle templating. What was that? Framework bundle. Must be something else in there that we need. Symphony bundle framework templating. All right, so if we go back to controller trait, it was getting templating. So if we can find out what the templating ID is. Must be in the extension. Loader. There we go. Alias is set to reset engine, set public true. Otherwise, it's a delegating engine. Fragment renderer. You know, there's the debug. This has fallen down pretty quickly. I was pretty excited. It was going smoothly. Let's see. All right, we can do debug container. And then I think we can look for twig. No. It's just a twig environment. Let's see what templating is. Select one of the following services. No. All right, twig environment it is. I should have just done that from the beginning. All right, so we'll do twig environment, twig. see if this works any better. So we'll go back to consuming messages. There, I did it. Cool. So messenger starting handling messages. Message class user registered. Debug. Did we get 2 of these? Starting and ending. So starting handling and finished handling. And if we go back to mail trap, it didn't actually send it though. Why did it not actually send it? So I've never had this problem before. Swift mailer send right away. So there's a couple of ways that Swift mailer not sending mail immediately. Just add the command spool send. It'll get sent to the kernel terminate event. So I think that's probably what's happening. So if I control C, maybe it will have sent, but it might not have had time to. Yeah. So unspool method. Yeah, so in case somebody is processing emails via message queue, using memory spool is the preferred option. However, memory spool is processed on kernel terminate. This never happens on long-running processes. On terminate method, you can invoke this method manually by dispatching your own event and subscribing above method to it. That looks like a pain. Wow. Event unspool. I think there might be a better way. How to send with Swift mailer. Maintenance mode, encryption host options. Provider sends the emails using the kernel terminate method. Using a command console, it's recommended that you disable the use of the memory spool. Just make sure to flush the message spool by hand. All right, so let's go to Swift mailer. Let's So there is no spool, but is it doing it anyway? Spooling, spool using a file. I don't want a spool at all. All right, spool. Default behavior is to send the email immediately. Communication. Alias for Swiftwaiter mail. Spool memory. Spool memory. How is that getting set? Email dev environment. I wonder if it's being set there. Oh. All right. Now let's see if this can happen right away. So we've created bar. Let's delete bar. And let's try to register again for bar. And we never did receive an email here. There we go. Bar. Sweet. So that's happening asynchronously. We haven't actually finished the redirect yet. So it appears to work, which is awesome. Let's request redirects to slash. We'll go ahead and allow that. All right, so now I'm going to, now I'm going to have some fun. Let's go ahead and try to do some fun stuff with the messages. And let's do Let's create multiple buses. Unique entity, Symphony. All right, so we're going to do exactly this. The bus that is going to be injected when injecting message bus interface. So this is the default, is going to be defined, and then we need to specify the names for the buses. So there's actually going to be multiples here. All right, so let's try that. So if we go to Messenger, routing, buses. No, yeah, we do that later. So default bus. Messenger.bus.commands. So again, what I was saying earlier is that the distinction between these is pretty subtle. They're both going to be messages. The difference is that here we consume, these are emitted as things that might be handled by more than one thing. This should be saying that something happened. And commands, on the other hand, are going to be things that need to be done. User registered is something that happened, and send email, or send email verification email to user would be a command. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to registration controller. Here's where things get a little more tricky now, because we can't just take in event bus interface, because now we need to specify which one we want. So it's going to get a little more tricky. I could maybe do my hack that I've done in the past. I'm going to do that, actually. So we have message bus interface. I'm going to create two classes out here. We're going to call them event bus implements. It's just going to be a decorator. We're going to implement message bus interface. Why is there not? Oh, that's why. All right. Hopefully this interface is easy. Now, just dispatch. This is a trick that I did a lot with Laravel code bases, to defeat the fact that you can't easily type hint scalars. So rather than having to add these to whole classes of things, you can just type hint against event bus or command bus. All right, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to create another class called command bus. All right. Why does that need envelope? That doesn't need to be there. It's not actually used here. All right. So now in our services, we need to define these. So we have event bus, and arguments $event bus, or no, it's a message bus. And this is where we need to type in things correctly. So in this case, we're going to do messenger.bus.events. Messenger bus events. And then we're going to do the same for here, except it's going to be command bus. And we need bus.commands. There we go. So event bus, command bus, these are different things, but they're essentially the same type of object. The only difference is the name. I'm going to go back now to registration controller, and what I can do now is bring in event bus and use it exactly like I did before. So we're still dispatching new user registered event, except this is in message. So let's try to make these things a little more explicit. This is the first opportunity I feel like I've had to start doing some more design stuff that makes me happy. So I'm going to move this into move file, message event, because this is really an event. But it didn't change here. And so I'll have to rename it. Here we go, event, just so that it's clear which is supposed to be used for which. All right, render. All right, so now what we have here is a combination of two things. This is going to be renamed to send email address verification email when user registers. Make that change. And where was this? Message handlers. Maybe we'll leave the, no, I think we want to make these two. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Okay, so rather than just doing this, This is going to be subscribing to an event and then dispatching some commands. So we have user registered. That's actually now in event. And we're going to want the event bus now, or the command bus. There we go. All right, so great. So we have user registered. We don't really need to do anything with this. We'll just leave this here as a placeholder because we need all of that content. So we have user registered. We more or less want to copy this to a command. And we'll do send email verification. Yeah. The only difference between these two is going to be that. All right. All right, this handler then is going to this command bus dispatch new send email address verification email, user registered, get user. Let's do it this way. This then needs to go in a new handler. So we'll call this handler send email and we need this. User there we go. So we also need twig and all that nonsense. Twig and the mailer. The first part of the this stuff anyway. So we need twig. We don't need the command bus again, so we can get rid of that. Don't need to save it for later. Let's see if there's anything else we're missing. All right, that means we don't need twig or Swift mailer here. The only thing I'm not liking about this so far is these message handlers are all in one spot. I kind of want to break them out, similar to what I did with the messages here, so we might have to do that. But this send email address verification email when user registers handler is a really good example of tying an event. In this case, user was registered to a command. And what this means is we can do a lot of stuff for reusing this code. So if we had another controller, if we go back to, say, registration controller, let's say we have another thing here where we say resend verification email. What we can do is say the user's already going to be there somehow, but rather than dispatching user registered event, what we could instead do is take in the command bus and command bus dispatch new send email verification email, and pass in this get user. There we go. So the complex bit of code that used to be up in here in line with everything now is executed both ways. One would be when you actually register, which is completely unrelated to setting the email verification email, but we're able to leverage that same code here by just sending a command directly rather than going through the user registration part. Let's see here. Cool. So I'm pretty happy with how that is looking so far, but I'm not sure how this works, if it does at all. It looks like we might need more configuration. Autoloader expected, but the class was not in it. So this command, looks like there's some namespace issues. So this was a command. Did a copy and paste and forgot that part of it. All right, cannot determine controller argument for registration controller resend verification email. It's type hinted with a non-existing class or interface. That's this part. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm actually just going to remove this. I'm not sure where the resend verification email controller will ever live. I mean, eventually it's going to have to be there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there now. So I'm going to not do that. All right, so now use an argument type and method does not exist. It's an email verification handler. All right. No, we need the handler. Here we go. So that's the problem. Just a couple of places where the refactoring didn't go according to plan. Everything there looks good. I'm a little surprised that it didn't give us more errors, but this must all be working as advertised. The thing I'm not sure about, and the thing that was never clear to me was, what was it? Was how the queues were going to be created. How does it differentiate between the queues? Or maybe it doesn't matter. So I would have guessed that there would be a command bus queue separate from the event bus queue. Let's see, maybe that's not even something we have to worry about. So let's do registration. Do all right, so if we go back to RabbitMQ management. So something did fail. Send email. Oh, another one. Type of the ID attribute for class must be one of int. Oh. Yeah, that's interesting. So this is, can I actually see specific messages? Publish message, get messages. I can't remember how I can look at a specific message. I say that like I've done this before. I just thought that I could get a specific message. Can I do that? Yeah, okay. All right, so the problem here is that the payload has almost everything in it that it's supposed to, except the user ID is null. And I don't know if that is, I think that might be because registration controller, no, we're doing flush after that. I wonder if there's something that's causing user registration to not serialize the ID. Because I can't think of another reason why that would be the case. Everything else is here that we need, just not the ID. And we do have an ID. Why is it not there? Actually, I should double check what type of message is that. Oh, so this is actually, yeah, so this, interesting. So this is actually the command. So the header here says that the type is send email verification email. So I wonder if this ID was there before and now it isn't. I'm going to create another one of these. So let's do bat. All right, so since we didn't have something watching for it, we should be able to see bats created. We should be able to also check here. Let's get message 1. Still the command. Let's do message 2. Getting messages from queue is a destructive action. What? Oh. Server reported 1 message remaining. All right, so what's happening here is kind of funny, is I can't look at message 2, apparently. I can only look at the most recent message. And so the most recent message is always going to be this. Not the most recent, the oldest. It's always going to be the send verification email. So what I'm going to do is ACK message. So what that's going to do is treat it as if I actually consumed the one that I see, which should show me the user registered event, and then we can see if the user is null in that case. Yeah, okay, so get messages. So now we're going to start knacking. Yeah, so here's user registered. User registered has a user that had an ID. Why is it that we're losing it here? Serializer entity ID. Oh. This is set of things. Pretty sure I have this, but let's double check. It's possible I don't for some reason. Wow. Okay. Let's see here. So does it actually add anything? Let's go ahead and clear this. And let's try again. Okay, so it has an ID here. Let's consume it. And look now. Wow. I want to see if this actually has something here. It may not even have it at this point, but I need to figure out if it's happening here or if it's happening here. If it's happening here, I don't know what's going on, but if it's happening here, then I know that this deserialization isn't working as expected. All right, so let's start consuming. There's nothing to do yet. Let's go to So that fails. Yeah. So at this point, by the time we get this user registered event, this is already null. Let's see what we have to do. Use messenger component, serializer. Symfony serializer. Must be something weird with the way that I'm doing this. All right, so this actually isn't the way I would have wanted to do this anyway. passing around the whole user object seems like overkill to me. So I'm going to switch this. It'll get past this bug, first of all, and then I can worry about that later. But what I'm going to do is change user registered to not have a user at all. It's going to have a user ID. So private user ID, we type int, constructor, getters and setters. Just getter. Let's just do a getter. All right, so we don't need entity user anymore. User registered, and then send email verification. I'm going to do the same thing. Okay. So if we go to registration controller, now we need to do user get ID. On our bridge here, we're going to do get user ID. ID. Then send. There we go. So we don't need to do anything different here because we're just passing the user ID along. But where we do need to change things is on here, because what we need here now is the user repository. All right, and then we need to get the user from the user ID. So user equals, well, let's do this first. User ID. We'll probably have to do some stuff here to handle edge cases, but I'm not going to worry about it just yet. Let's see, let's go ahead and purge. And let's create back. And start consuming. All right. This time, it looks like everything worked correctly. At least we didn't see an error. If we go back to the queue, there's nothing in the queue. And if we go here, we can see we got an email for back. That was a little more painful than I thought it was going to be, mostly because for whatever reason, the serializer didn't like to serialize a user. Actually, no, that's not true. It was deserialize that was causing a problem. Because the serialized message actually contained the ID. It was just that when it was deserializing, it didn't keep it for some reason. So what we have now is the ability to communicate with users via email. Let's see, where are we at for time? Looks like we're a little over 10 minutes, or a little over 10 o'clock, but I think that's fine. We can keep going. So I want to actually do something to verify these email addresses. Let's go and actually let's add everything here. Let's add the stuff we've added so far. So git add source, config, templates. Cool. All right, so we got everything in here. there's stuff that we need to do, we can do that. Okay, so for our user, we now have an email address on the user themselves, and what we need to do is probably set a code of some sort, and also a flag dictating whether they've verified. I can't remember what the conventions are. Symphony, no, doctrine, entity, conventions, Boolean. I want to see, I think it's if. So we'll do is verified? No, we'll just do verified. Column type bool. Okay, let's do some getters and setters. I think we can make this a little better. Okay. Okay, so I think we have those bits right. Let's do default name type precision scale unique. All right, so this is Boolean. There we go. All right, so it's adding email address verification code and adding a Boolean. We got to get rid of this. See if we can do migrate. No. All right, so the verification code can't be null. I think that's probably reasonable to assume. So let's go ahead and delete these just to make life easier on us. Okay. We're starting to put a lot of stuff in the registration controller that should probably be elsewhere. You need to generate cryptographically secure. So let's encode strings. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit lost here. So spool emails, RabbitMQ, serializer. PHP random. Maybe I'll try this. Where's my user? There we go. All right, so what this should do is anytime a new user is created, is create an email address verification code to be stored. We should be able to then, here, we're passing in the user, so we should be able to access their code. So if we go to the template, email address. not going to worry about that. I'm just going to assume people can see this. And then for the text version, I guess I'll just do this on registration. Verify email address. The thing I'm not sure about is whether I can use the URL generator in Twig at that point, but we'll have to see. Verify request. Something we'll need, we'll do verify. How do I specify defaults? Symphony route optional parameter. I think I just have to do page defaults. Null. Okay, so we'll do code, defaults, registration / verify. And I think just for tonight, I'm going to try and get as far as showing the code. And I wonder if we should have the email address as well. Verify email address. so go back to here, code. All right, so we have, here we go. Okay. I think this is right. Verify email address. So that's in here. Verified email address violates not null. Okay. There we go. All right, so let's look at Mailtrap. All right, so we aren't actually consuming things, it looks like, so I'm fine with that. So let's go look. RabbitMQ has something here. So user ID 16. If we look at here, we've got verified email address, email verification code. All right, and then let's consume. You did all the things. Let's see here. Mailbox, verify your email address. Click here to verify. HTML source has localhost verify, foodexample.com. Text has an email address as well, raw. Cool. Gonna open this in a new tab. Valley not found. Ah. All right. Let's be okay with that for this moment. And let's just replace this. Verify email address. All right. All right, so let's So this is something that I think I want to enforce is a logged in user. Let's go to the base template because I think I did some stuff already like this. Login, yeah, app.user. All right, so there is no user at this point, so we can't do that. So what I want to do is go to security, and I want to add another access control. And this is going to be for verify email address. And just for verify email address. And I'm going to require role user. So what's going to happen is if you try to access this URL and you're not logged in, it's going to redirect you and ask you to log in. So here, foo. All right, now it's redirecting back to here. And now it's saying, hi, foo, do you verify that foo belongs to you? We can do some more checking in the registration controller because user request get user So what we can do is make sure that what we're getting here actually makes sense. So check email address verification, we're going to pass in the code and the email address. Return this abort, no. We'll actually return cannot verify email address. So return So unless the email address and email verification code are correct, we don't show this value. So we need to do cannot verify email address. And we're going to use this template. I called check email address verification on null. Get user. Session. Get. No. Get user objects on controller. All right, so let's see here. There we go. Cool. Sorry, we cannot. Okay, so email address, and let's do. Need to actually see what value we have there. Are you sure? Oh yeah, you're right. Sometimes I argue with the sometimes I argue with error messages. So it is getting foo at example.com. I might have had my Boolean logic backwards here. So if the code is equal to the code, and that is true. No, I don't. So that's the problem. So I just DDD rubber duct, DD rubber duct. Okay, so now it does think it's true. If I say sorry, can I verify your email address at this time? Okay, so we can do some checking there. I think I just realized that the other bit that we probably need to keep track of is maybe some timing stuff. It's possible that we want these email address verifications to expire, but I don't really know if that's going to be a huge issue. So we can't go here unless we're logged in. So I'm going to log out, try to hit this URL. I need to be logged in. I'm going to log in as me. Oh. And I need to be a user. Interesting. So I thought roles admin inherited from role user, but maybe it doesn't. So let me log out. This URL. And that makes sense. I guess I can't really test it then. Oh well. I'll log out here. I'll try it again as, was it foo? There we go. All right, so then we need to do the next step here. Verify email address. Let's see if we can do equals get. This is for Symfony, older versions of Symfony, right? Yeah. Symfony route annotation. All right. Methods get. Apparently double quotes are required. All right, so then this is going to be post. So we should get a no route defined in theory. No. Maybe I didn't specify that here. Button type equals submit. Okay, so no post. So we want this to make sure and only do some checks on post. So all right, so if it's submitted and we don't have the information we're looking for, then we want to redirect back to route. We want to go back to verify email address. With code and email address. All right. Create this file. There we go. All right, so it's not actually going to do anything at this point, but if we get here, if we don't pass this, then it's going to require us to go back. If we do, it should show us that we successfully updated. So let's see if this works. Cool. So because I clicked on the button on the previous screen, it worked. So let's do no route get. We have to have different names for them, I think. Verify email address. Access. All right. So the problem there is that since the URLs were the same, well, actually because the names were the same for the routes, it was defaulting to this post URL because this one would be read second. So let's do yes, verified email address. Cool. So I'm going to try and hack this now. I'm going to do some DOM hacking and see if this works. So yes, submit, post. We'll do the name that we just did. So it's verify email address success. I'm going to put the code in the URL. Actually, I'm going to do all of it. Okay, so actually created, verify my email address, put it all in there. So what I'm going to do is change the URL to .co and submit it. And as we're redirecting back now to foo.example.co, and then it's going to say, hi, sorry, we cannot verify your email address at this time. So if anyone ever tried to do something wrong, they wouldn't be able to, or if the code had changed. So let's say, there we go. Hi, Foo, sorry. There we go. So I think that's probably pretty safe. The whole workflow is kind of annoying as far as what the emails look like, but it's getting there. So I'm pretty satisfied with how this has worked out. So we've got a lot done on this. We have, let's see, so we set up the queues, we got RabbitMQ and Symfony Messenger component working. We have, we've added email addresses, we've made sure that isVerified works, and we got SwiftMailer and Mailtrap up and running. So except for making it look pretty, I'd say we're probably mostly done with registration, which is pretty exciting. I don't think I'm going to launch it today, but possibly before next Tuesday. So anyway, thank you for joining this evening. This was a really interesting experience trying to figure all this stuff out for the first time in front of people. So enjoy, have a good night, have a good weekend, and talk to you next week.